10 Rules for Building in the Dark by David Russo. Chapter 1. Start before you're ready. Rule 1. Clarity comes through action. There's never a perfect time to begin. There's just now, the awkward, uncertain, unprepared now. Most people wait. They wait for a sign, for confidence, for the right plan, the right gear, the right moment. They confuse readiness with permission. But the truth is, the dark doesn't get lighter until you move. You can't think your way into clarity. You earn it through motion. Every idea begins as fog. You can see the outline of something, but the details vanish when you reach for them. That's not a flaw in the process. That is the process. The only way to see clearly is to step forward, let the fog shift, and watch what appears next. Every action, even the clumsy ones, sharpens your vision just a little more. We love the illusion of preparation because it feels safe. Planning lets us pretend we're making progress while avoiding the risk of actually doing. But stillness breeds overthinking, and overthinking breeds fear. Waiting for certainty is just fear wearing discipline's clothes. The first draft of anything, an idea, a business, a life, is supposed to be rough. It's supposed to wobble. Momentum matters more than precision. You can't steer a parked car. You can only correct course once you're in motion. Start messy. Start before you have the answers. Start with what you have, not with what you wish you had. When you take that first imperfect step, something shifts. The resistance softens, the dark adjusts around you. You realize that movement itself is a kind of light, not bright enough to see everything, but just enough to show you where to place your foot next. Clarity isn't waiting somewhere ahead of you. It's hiding inside the work you haven't done yet. The only way to find it is to begin, so start. Not because you're ready, but because staying still has finally become unbearable. Start before you're sure. Start before it makes sense. Start while it's still dark. You'll be surprised how quickly the path begins to glow beneath your steps. Chapter 2. Build quietly, relentlessly. Rule 2. Let your work speak before you do. There's a strange pressure in our time to be seen, to show progress, to narrate the process, to prove that you're doing something worth attention. We share before we're ready because silence feels like invisibility, and invisibility feels like failure. But the loudest builders aren't always the ones building the most. When you choose to build quietly, you reclaim focus. You stop performing for the world and start listening to the work itself. There's no audience in the dark, no expectations, no applause to chase. That absence of noise gives you something rare, the freedom to make something honest. Every time you share too soon, you invite distortion. Feedback arrives before the foundation is steady, and suddenly you're shaping your work to fit opinions that don't yet matter. Validation becomes a drug quick to hit, quick to fade. You end up chasing reaction instead of refinement. The quiet phase is sacred. It's the stretch of solitude where the real growth happens, the learning, the mistakes, the invisible breakthroughs that no one else will ever see. That's the part most people skip because it doesn't come with proof of progress. But that's where your edge is formed. Restraint isn't hiding, it's cultivating. When you build quietly, you're not withdrawing from the world, you're protecting the work while it learns to stand. You're giving it time to harden, to deepen, to grow roots strong enough to survive exposure. The world will see it eventually, but when it does, it will be undeniable. There's a different kind of power in staying underestimated. When no one's watching, you're free to take risks that public eyes would discourage. You can fail quietly and recover quickly. You can reinvent yourself without permission. The less you explain, the faster you evolve. So, build in the silence. Let your output speak in a language louder than self-promotion ever could. When your work finally emerges, it won't need an introduction. It will already know what it is. That's the paradox of the quiet builder. By staying unseen, you become unstoppable. Chapter 3. Trust what you can't see. Rule 3. Growth hides before it shows. The toughest part of creating in the dark is convincing yourself that progress is happening at all. You keep showing up day after day, but everything looks still. No applause, no leaps forward, no sign that your effort is landing anywhere. The silence starts to sound like failure. But more often than not, that silence is simply the sound of roots growing deeper. Every meaningful beginning is invisible on purpose. Seeds don't sprout the moment they're planted. They strengthen underground first. The unseen stage is where the real work happens. Slow, quiet, essential. Before anything can bloom, the roots must hold firm. Your journey follows the same law. What feels like waiting is often wiring. What feels like wandering is usually building wisdom. Progress isn't something you can always spot from the outside. The hidden work, the repetition, the small course corrections, the hours no one praises, that's where your real advantage forms. These invisible layers are what give your visible results their strength. Skip them, and what you build won't stand when it finally meets the spotlight. But we live in a world that worships evidence. Proof, performance, metrics, that's what we're taught to chase. Yet the most transformative growth leaves no trace. You can't quantify patience. You can't graph discipline. You can't capture resilience in a post. True progress doesn't show up in data. It shows up in who you become when the next challenge hits. There will be days when it all feels circular, like you're walking the same path, seeing no change. Look closer. The shifts are subtle, sharper focus, calmer reactions, a steadier pulse in your process. That's what invisible evolution looks like. It's quiet because it's genuine. So trust it. Trust the hidden grind, the empty days that aren't really empty. Keep showing up even when the results are still taking shape. You're pouring the concrete that will carry weight later. Progress in the dark is faith in motion. You work not because the finish line is visible, but because you believe the work itself is remaking you, preparing you to handle the light when it finally finds you. Chapter 4. Obsess over the process, not the praise. Rule 4. Detach from outcome, commit to craft. When no one's watching, process is everything. The dark strips away the applause, the deadlines, the external rewards, and what's left is the work itself. That's where you learn who you really are as a builder. Do you still care when there's no audience to impress? Do you still show up when no one's keeping score? The world teaches you to chase results. We celebrate the launch, the award, the viral post. But those moments are only echoes of the work that came before. They're not the work itself. If you fall in love with the outcome, you'll live in constant hunger, always chasing the next visible win. But if you fall in love with the process, you'll never run out of meaning. Process is where mastery lives. It's where you refine your instincts, test your limits, and confront the small truths that make the work yours. It's the repetition that builds rhythm, the frustration that sharpens precision, the boredom that teaches patience. Every iteration, even the failed ones, carries its own quiet value. There's a rare peace that comes from surrendering to the process, from knowing that what you're making today doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be true. You stop measuring your worth by applause and start measuring it by depth. You begin to realize that the work is the reward, not what the work brings. Praise can be dangerous when it arrives too early. It tricks you into performing instead of progressing. The moment you start creating for approval, you lose touch with the pulse that made you start. Detachment isn't about rejecting recognition. It's about remembering that it isn't the goal. Your job is to build, refine, and stay devoted to the craft long enough for it to reveal what it's meant to be. So keep your hands dirty. Keep your focus narrow. Show up for the process, not for the metrics, not for the validation, but for the quiet satisfaction of seeing something take shape under your care. Because in the dark, process is your only compass. And if you learn to love that part, the long hours, the revisions, the unseen devotion, you'll never be lost, no matter how far from the finish line you are. Chapter 5. Design with constraints, not complaints. Rule 5. Use what you have. The dark is never generous. It gives you less time, fewer tools, smaller audiences. It forces you to build with scraps, half ideas, limited resources, uncertain energy, and that's exactly why it's valuable. Scarcity is not your enemy. It's your greatest collaborator. When everything feels limited, creativity sharpens. You stop waiting for ideal conditions and start asking better questions. What can I make with what's here? That's where innovation begins, not in abundance, but in necessity. The absence of options becomes a kind of focus. Every constraint cuts distraction, forcing you to see the essential shape of your work. Most people complain about what they don't have: more funding, more followers, more time. But the best builders learn to see limits as design tools. The lack of polish makes them inventive. The lack of resources makes them precise. When you can't afford to waste, you begin to see what really matters. Every masterpiece began inside a box. Artists have always been bound by limits: the size of a canvas, the reach of a budget, the confines of a medium. Constraints give form to imagination. Without them, ideas remain abstract, untested, and impossible to hold. There's a quiet power in using what's already in your hands. The broken tools, the outdated gear, the late nights after your day job, all of it is raw material. You don't need more, you need to use better. Every limitation hides a doorway, if you're willing to see it that way. The dark doesn't owe you perfect conditions. It offers the opposite, friction, and that friction builds skill. You learn to adapt, to simplify, to improvise. You learn that resourcefulness is a muscle, one that only grows when it's under pressure. So don't wait for more light, more time, or more permission. Work with what's here, build inside the box until the box breaks. Use the limits to carve out something unmistakably yours, because one day, when the light finally arrives, you'll realize that what made you different wasn't what you lacked, it was how you built anyway. Chapter 6. Ignore the echoes. Rule 6. Not all feedback is fuel. The moment you start building, the echoes arrive: opinions, advice, comparisons, noise. Everyone has something to say about a thing that isn't finished yet. Some of it comes from care, some from projection, some from the human need to be heard. But if you listen to every voice, you'll lose your own. The dark is quiet, but your mind isn't. When you're deep in the work, doubt becomes an internal chorus. Is this good enough? Am I wasting time? Should I be doing it differently? Then the outside world adds its own soundtrack: algorithms, comments, and solicited opinions dressed up as wisdom. Soon, you're not building anymore. You're reacting. Feedback can be powerful, but only at the right time. Early on, it's a toxin. You're still shaping the soul of what you're making, and too much exposure too soon will distort its form. Like taking a photograph out of the darkroom before it's developed, the image fades before it's fully defined. You need a season of silence, a protected space where your intuition leads, not the crowd. That's where your voice learns to breathe on its own. Feedback should refine your direction, not replace it. The best builders know when to seek it and when to block it out entirely. Not every critic is your teacher. Not every suggestion is improvement. The people who truly understand your work will challenge you without reshaping your core. Everyone else is just an echo, a reflection of their own fears, preferences, and limits. Learn to listen without absorbing. Take what sharpens you, discard what dulls you. You don't owe anyone access to your process. Protect it like a flame in the wind. The early drafts, the rough sketches, the private doubts, they belong to you alone. Once the work is strong enough to stand, it can face the noise, but not before. In the dark, silence is strategy. Guard it. Because the quieter you stay, the louder your finished work will sound when it finally speaks, so stay patient. Stay hidden. Keep working beneath the surface. The roots always grow first. Chapter 7. Make it ugly first. Rule 7. Version 1 will suck, build it anyway. The first version will never look like what you imagined. It will be rough, incomplete, messy, a far cry from the polished vision inside your head. That's the nature of beginnings. The gap between idea and execution is wide, uneven, and full of ugly surprises. Most people never cross it. They hold back, waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect skill set, the perfect inspiration. They want their first draft to be a masterpiece, but that's a trap. The pursuit of perfection is the enemy of progress. It's what keeps good ideas trapped in your mind, never born into reality. Making something ugly first isn't failure, it's courage. It's the willingness to show up with something imperfect and say, here it is, I'm starting. Because once the first rough version exists, it becomes a foundation, something real you can learn from, improve, and build on. The ugly first version carries a kind of magic. It frees you from the pressure of being flawless. It invites feedback, discovery, and iteration. It's raw, but it's honest. And honesty is where real growth begins. If you wait for your work to be perfect, you'll wait forever. But if you commit to making the ugly first version, you start a momentum that no amount of fear can stop. Every iteration after that is a step closer to what you really want to create. So don't polish before you ship. Don't polish before you learn. Put the ugly version out into the world, or at least into your own hands, and give yourself permission to be imperfect, because ugly is the first step toward beautiful. Chapter 8. Stay unknown. Stay dangerous. Rule 8. Anonymity is a superpower. The spotlight is seductive. It promises recognition, validation, and a shortcut to influence. But it also comes with strings, expectations, scrutiny, and the pressure to perform. The moment you step into the light, you trade freedom for visibility, and that exchange can cost you your creative edge. In the dark, anonymity is your armor. When no one knows your name or watches your every move, you gain permission to experiment recklessly, fail loudly, and pivot without explanation. You become untouchable, not because you're hiding, but because you're free. Being unknown doesn't mean being invisible. It means you can build without the burden of legacy or reputation. You can take risks that would terrify someone in the spotlight. You can break rules, explore new ideas, and evolve without the weight of judgment. There's a quiet power in staying underestimated. When others overlook you, they also underestimate what you're capable of. That underestimation is an advantage, a secret source of strength that lets you move faster, fail harder, and grow stronger. The dark is a laboratory where anonymity fuels innovation. You can test hypotheses without fear of failure. You can iterate in public's blind spot. And when you finally reveal your work, it arrives fully formed, unstoppable, and unshackled from the expectations of an audience. But beware the temptation to chase the spotlight too early. The moment you crave attention more than growth, you shift from builder to performer. That's when your work begins to serve the crowd, not your vision. You lose the ability to surprise, to disrupt, to create on your own terms. So guard your anonymity fiercely. Celebrate the freedom it brings. Use it to stay dangerous, to keep pushing boundaries, breaking molds, and rewriting the rules. The unknown builder is not powerless. They are empowered by their invisibility. Eventually, the spotlight will find you. And when it does, you'll be ready not because you sought the fame, but because you earned the work. You'll step into the light carrying the confidence of countless experiments, failures, and silent victories. Until then, stay unknown. Stay dangerous. Let your work speak while your name remains a whisper in the dark. Chapter 9. Endure longer than it makes sense. Rule 9. Resilience outlasts brilliance. Building in the dark is a lonely game. The world moves on while you stay, day after day, facing uncertainty and doubt. There's no applause, no rush of success, sometimes not even a hint that what you're doing matters. The silence stretches, the loneliness deepens, and the question haunts you, why am I still here? Brilliance shines like a flare, sudden, bright, but often brief. It grabs attention and fades quickly. But resilience is the quiet force that endures beyond flashes of inspiration. It's the long, steady burn that keeps you showing up when the thrill is gone and the path is unclear. When everyone else has moved on to something easier, resilience anchors you. It's grit in action, that stubborn refusal to quit, even when quitting seems like the smartest choice. It's the willingness to push past exhaustion, frustration, and fear, because you know the work isn't done yet. Endurance is a test of faith, not in instant results, but in slow transformation. You believe in the process even when the progress is invisible. You hold on to the hope that the breakthrough will come not because you see it, but because you trust the journey enough to keep walking. The dark gets colder the longer you stay. It can feel foolish, even reckless. Friends may question your sanity. Doubts will scream louder than ever before, but that's precisely when breakthroughs happen. In the stretch where most give up, you learn to become unbreakable. Resilience isn't about willpower alone. It's about self-compassion, rest, and strategy. It's knowing when to lean in and when to step back. It's finding small wins to celebrate and reasons to keep going even in the smallest details. Remember, endurance is a muscle. The more you build it, the stronger you become, not just as a builder, but as a person. You learn to weather storms with grace, to transform setbacks into fuel, and to trust that your work matters even when no one else sees it. So stay longer than it makes sense. Keep building when the world has moved on. Because the dark doesn't last forever, but your resilience will carry you into the light. Chapter 10. Light your own torch. Rule 10. Be the proof. After the long nights of uncertainty, the silent grind, and the invisible growth, something shifts. You become your own light. When you first started building in the dark, you looked for signs, guidance, validation, encouragement from outside. But over time, you learn that no one else will carry the flame for you. The torch must be lit from within. You've walked blind, step by step, without clarity or audience. You built quietly, endured when it made no sense, and trusted the invisible work beneath the surface. And now, your work is no longer just a project in progress. It's proof. Proof that persistence matters. Proof that momentum beats perfection. Proof that courage in the dark creates its own dawn. Being the proof means owning your journey, every ugly first draft, every failure, every moment of doubt. Your scars are the map, your progress the compass. You don't wait for permission or applause anymore. You are your own validation. This torch you carry is not just for you. It's a beacon for those who come after, the quiet builders still learning to trust the process, still wrestling with uncertainty. Your light shows them the way forward, not by dazzling, but by shining steadily through the night. You don't need a spotlight to make an impact. The brightest lights often burn quietly at first, hidden behind walls, in basements, in small studios. But they reach far. They inspire without words. They create ripples that move mountains. So light your own torch fiercely. Nurture it with every action, every choice to keep going when it would be easier to quit. Let it burn through the dark places that once held you back. Let it be the source of your strength, your hope, your vision. And when others ask how you did it, you won't have a tidy answer. You'll say, I built in the dark. I stayed unknown. I endured longer than it made sense. And I trusted myself enough to keep moving because in the end, the greatest proof is the light you carry, the light that no darkness can ever extinguish.